They are also doing a lot of research on low carb.
Okay.
And anyway, I was invited to speak because they did have some focused on sugar, and it wasn't clear to me what my time slot was. And usually I usually get about 30 minutes when I'm speaking somewhere. And when I got there, they told me, well, your slide presentation has too many slides because you only have 15 minutes. So, and they
fast.
yeah, so I really did the first part of it, and they finally put it up on YouTube this past week. And, I was watching it and I was like, oh, I have never given this full presentation. And it's kind of like my magnum opus. So, I thought, well, I'll do it tonight and record it and get it up on YouTube, because it's interesting. I've had some comments already in the one that's up on the COSI YouTube channel. So,
COSI, that's okay.
Well, it stands for collaborative science, but they,
right.
Got my COSI. So we'll just give folks a few more minutes. And if there's anyone new to the Sugar Shift Challenge, I am going to be making a little more detailed video about, what it entails. But I think tonight's presentation is a really great way to just kind of look at the whole piece of the puzzle and what we're trying to do with not only Sugar Shift, but also our educational platform, which the Sugar Shift Challenge is really an educational platform. We put it in place initially for support for people who start taking Sugar Shift and really don't know a lot about the microbiome and are just starting to try to figure out, okay, well, what should I watch? What should I look at? How do I know if something's working? How long does it take to remodel my gut? All of that. And so, it initially started out as we would do a 3-month challenge or a 6-month challenge and have people tracking. But it's just kind of evolved into more of a continuous educational platform. People can come in and out, but we're really wanting to provide people that broader set of knowledge of, what is impacting your microbiome and how important your microbiome is to your overall health and how it connects to a lot of other pieces of the puzzle. So I am working on the schedule for upcoming speakers, and I'm going to have Caroline Allen, who is the founder of Beam Minerals, and you'll be able to connect the minerals from tonight's talk. And in March, I'm going to have Lynn Peoples, who's the author of Our Internal Clock. She'll be with us. And then on March 11th, I have Dr. Petra Dorsman, who's a naturopath who has been actually working very closely with me and a group of scientists looking at these connections between the microbiome, the membrane, which when I did this original presentation, I didn't know the term glycocalyx. So we'll talk a bit about that, but Petra's going to talk about that and some of the work that she's doing in her practice and what she's learning, and share that with all of us here. So with that, I am going to just say thank you for coming, and I'm going to share my presentation screen and we'll get started with. Oh, I have to click this other button. Okay. Okay. So can you see that?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So As many of you know, I mean, obviously, I have a probiotics company. I started the Bio Collective, which was all about microbes. And along the way, I met Morley Robbins, and he has been on here a couple of times. He was on here about a month ago, and really started to learn about the importance of minerals and how mineral deficiency in our food supply was impacting us, and started working closely with Morley, showing him how the microbes transform the minerals and looking at those pieces together. And where a lot of this happens actually is at the membranes, this interface that we have. And of course, the messages are coming from all those molecules that are passing through the membranes. So tonight we're just going to kind of cover these topics, and then I'll open it up for questions, and we'll just kind of see where it goes. So for most of you who've been here before, you're familiar with me. I'm the founder of the Bio Collective and BiotiQuest Probiotics. If you're interested, I have a TED Talk, Do Microbes Predict or Cause Diseases Like Parkinson's? And I got into all of this because of my husband John's Parkinson's disease. And it's really taken me on quite a journey. So what is the microbiome? What are these mighty microbes? We're actually more microbial than we are human. I talk about that a lot. And I think the average person does not realize that. In terms of the number of microbes, there are 100 trillion microbes in and on our body. And we have the human genome, but we also carry all the DNA or the genome of all the bacteria, fungi, and viruses in our body. And that is on order of magnitude. There are anywhere between 150 to 300 times more bacterial genes than there are human genes. And there are many things that only the bacteria are making. And I will talk about that a bit later on, but there are 3 critical amino acids that we don't make for ourselves, but the microbes have the genes to make those, and they make those in our gut. In terms of human cells to bacterial cells, I think the consensus now is about 2 to 1, two bacterial cells for every human cell. So again, more microbial than human. Weighs about 4 pounds, and it's made up of all these different organisms and the bioactive peptides and molecules that they're making. So what does it do? Well, the microbiome is doing digestion and nutrient metabolism. It's making many of our neurotransmitters, so the gut-brain hormones. 70% of our immune system is in our gut, and that is where a lot of that training happens when we're babies. In the gut, trains our immune system. It regulates metabolism, so that energy storage and expenditure, which is a lot of what Sugar Shift is focused on, is this energy storage and expenditure area. It's producing your B vitamins. It's regulating inflammation. It's fermenting all kinds of different metabolites. It does detoxification. It's producing those amino acids, tryptophan, tyrosine, and phenylalanine, short chain fatty acids like butyrate, which is essential for feeding the cells of the gut lining. And when things are in balance, it's also providing pathogen protection. So we know microbes are everywhere. Of course, in the last 4 years, we've kind of had the reign of terror again, where everyone thinks that we have to sanitize ourselves to death, and the next big killer is right around the corner. And that mentality of kill, 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 and disinfection, of course, is it's impacting us. There's something called the hygiene hypothesis that talks about how this over-sanitized world we're living in has had a tremendous impact on us. And the same thing is happening down here in our soil with all the chemical agriculture we're using, is really having an impact on our microbial diversity. And those microbes at these interfaces are what transform these minerals. And I know some of you have been with us for a while, some of you not. So I have a little book that I talk about a lot. It's my favorite little book called The Life Bridge, The Way to Longevity with Probiotic Nutrients. And a good portion of that book talks about how the microbes transform the minerals into more bioavailable molecules. And I'm actually working on an update. I didn't write that book. I tried to get the authors to write an update. It's about 20 years old, but I couldn't get them to. So I actually just started writing an update myself, and I hope to get that book launched later this year. So minerals. Minerals are cofactors for hundreds of enzymes involved in metabolism. Without minerals, you don't have the active enzymes. Again, that life bridge, I just love that term because it's taking inorganic matter, which is these inorganic minerals, and transforming them into an organic molecule that can be absorbed as nutrition into our body. Minerals are essential for energy production. All energy production requires minerals. And microbes and cells can't make energy without minerals. Organophosphate herbicides, I talk about glyphosate a lot in various presentations. I have an article in the Weston Price Journal last quarter about glyphosate and minerals. And glyphosate tightly binds minerals. It was originally made as a minerals chelator. And when it binds those minerals, it makes them inaccessible for the enzyme cofactors. So there's a researcher at the University of Pennsylvania, Douglas Wallace, who has said that all disease is an energy deficiency. Let's see. So what are we made of? So mostly, so 97.7% were made of oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and calcium. But there are all these other trace elements, they call them, because we're not made up that much of them, that are key to life. So phosphorus, which is a structural component of nucleotide coenzymes, ATP, which is part of energy, contains phosphorus, and the moving around of those phosphorus molecules is part of what's going on in energy. Magnesium. Magnesium is essential for the excitation of your muscles and nerves. It's a cofactor for over 300 enzyme reactions involving the energy storage molecule ATP. And magnesium, there are a lot of, if you go to the market and you start looking at magnesium, there are a lot of different forms of magnesium, and many of them are not very bioavailable. So the thing that the microbes do is it makes the minerals in a sort of nano size, which makes them much more easy to absorb. Copper, if you joined us for Morley Robbins, Morley, it's all about copper. It's really an essential cofactor in some of the key energy enzymes in the body. Cytochrome C oxidase, which is a key part of the mitochondrial respiratory chain, which is where that energy gets produced. It's also involved in the recycling of iron, and iron is what's carrying oxygen in the body. So if copper's not working properly, then iron's not working properly, and it can present as oftentimes people will think they're anemic, but the problem is actually copper. And then, there's iron, of course, which is the central metal in the hemoglobin molecule. And then zinc, which is essential for 100 enzymes. And some of those are also involved in energy metabolism. And there's lots more on the periodic table. So here's our periodic table of elements. And you see in the blue, those are essential elements for people. And the yellow are, I think, essential elements for plants. It says they're both people. But anyway, these are some of those key elements that are moving and important to all those enzymes. Hydrogen up here, of course, one of the most important, hydrogen and oxygen, which makes water, and we're a huge percent water. So key trace elements in enzyme cofactors for energy production. Back to magnesium, as I said, about 300 different enzymes require magnesium. That energy molecule ATP synthesis and utilization requires magnesium. It is required for making RNA and DNA. So repairing and restoring our RNA and DNA in the system and keeping us healthy and living well for a long time. Iron, that assists in energy production. It's also involved in DNA synthesis, and it's required for red blood cell function. Copper, energy production, iron recycling and metabolism, and amidation of something called neuropeptides and hormones. And that is really one of the key untold stories, I think, of copper is this. There's one particular enzyme called peptidoglycine alpha amidating monooxygenase, which is a real mouthful. But for short, you can call it PAM, the PAM enzyme. And that enzyme is essential for the activation of about 50% or more of the neuropeptides and hormones in the human body, meaning they will not work properly without that peptide, and that peptide requires copper. So a very key component that a lot of people have never heard of. Zinc, again, that's energy production, protein, RNA, DNA synthesis, and hemoglobin. But another kind of little unknown factor for most people is if you get too much zinc, it blocks the uptake of and usage of copper. So if you think back over the last 4 years with COVID and the recommendation, take zinc, take zinc, take zinc, you do not want to take large doses of zinc every day without for any period of extended time, because it will disrupt your copper metabolism. And then manganese, that's involved in an enzyme called SOD, which is a detoxifier, and manganese is also very important in plants for the structure of the lignin in the plant. And so when we start getting all of these disrupted in the plant material too, it starts to cause issues. And if you want to read more about that, you can go to the Weston Price article, and it goes into pretty good detail on what happens with glyphosate in a plant and in our own collagen when it binds up these minerals. So what's happening here in the gut? Vitamins are extracted and produced in the gut by microbes. So you can see here, there are different sections of our gut, and we talk about these sometimes, but in the duodenum, that's where a number of these B vitamins, A, D, E, and K, those are your fat-soluble vitamins. That's where that uptake is occurring. In the jejunum, A, D, E, and K, again, those fat-soluble vitamins. Vitamin C, which can be made by microbes, and B vitamins. And then your minerals in both of these places are being taken up. And then In the ileum, you've got C, D, K, you've got those B's again, you've got the minerals selenium, magnesium, and manganese. And then you get to the colon, and that is B7 and vitamin K, the minerals potassium, sodium, chloride, and your short chain fatty acids. And all of this is being sort of made along the way and secreted into the tissues of the body. So again, these, I call them the mighty microbes, and this is just an example of the Krebs cycle and B vitamin production and where along the pathway with these microbes. And I have a rather detailed paper that actually tells you which microbes can make which of these B vitamins. But there's a lot of B vitamin deficiency these days, and much of that is due to the disruption in the minerals and the microbiome, where, these are the energy producing vitamins. With low B vitamins, low energy. Just pretty pictures. So again, that life bridge. So if you're not familiar with the mitochondria, that's known as the energy powerhouse of our cells. Mitochondria are relatives of bacteria. They both have a Krebs cycle, and magnesium activates most of the key enzymes in the Krebs cycle. So again, that magnesium is really, really essential. So a lot of action is occurring in these membranes. Again, you can see here in different sections kind of which, so chromium, that's one we didn't talk about, but chromium here is in, I think chromium is in the jejunum, and that also affects blood sugar. So sometimes you'll see blood sugar supplements that have chromium in them. So these membranes, so I found this interesting. I did this presentation about a year ago, and I was just really beginning to hear the term, the glycocalyx, from Dr. Barry Ninham, a scientist in Australia that I have been most fortunate to become friends with over the last 15 months. And we're working on a Parkinson's disease publication that I think is going to explain the battle in the gut and the physical chemistry that happens in the body that presents in a variety of different symptoms. But at this membrane, what is a membrane? I like this term ecotone, but Barry tells me it's too esoteric for most people. It's actually an ecological term where if you have a transition area between two biological communities, so say at the ocean, where the ocean meets the sand, there's that ecotone of those two different environments. And then as you move up from the sand into a wooded area, for example, that would be an ecotone. And it's really in those meeting areas where there's often the most diversity of species. And of course, we're talking about microbial diversity. But so along these membranes in our gut flowing along, we have our nutrients, there's pathogens that we're taking in through our food, there's chemicals. We're producing waste products and sometimes consuming waste products. And so you have all this sort of particulate that's moving along, and you have the little villi that are kind of checking it out and trying to see what's there and what they actually need to do with it. So the information from the food and the microbes moves through the body membranes, and that's our barrier between all of this matter moving through the central digestive system and our blood vessels and tissues and all of that. But this is a very thin membrane that is our area of protection. So when you have a gap in the membrane, a lot of people have heard of leaky gut, but when you have these gaps in the membrane in the gut, cellular debris or even proteins from food that is not completely digested can cross over that membrane. And one that you may have heard me talk about before on other presentations I've done is something called lipopolysaccharide. And lipopolysaccharide is the cell walls of gram-negative bacteria, and it's highly inflammatory. And when it crosses that gut barrier, it can get in the bloodstream and can really go anywhere in the body. And there are animal models using lipopolysaccharide to mimic different diseases. And there's a Parkinson's model. It's known to cause depression. It's also used in diabetes models. I think there's an MS model. So it has a lot of different action if you get lipopolysaccharide crossing that barrier. There's many other cellular debris components that can also cause problems that are not lipopolysaccharide, but it's cell walls from other organisms or proteins from food that hasn't been properly digested. So that's this, it's a key inflammatory danger signal. And oftentimes in sepsis, if you're familiar with sepsis, when somebody gets an infection, they get this metabolic endotoxemia, and that's often what will kill them. So, you know, back to our little diagram here, we have these chemical and electrical messages that are being produced and read along this lining to tell the system what is going on. Now, in March, when Petra comes and talks to us, she'll probably talk to us in a little more detail about the glycocalyx and what that membrane is in our cardiovascular system. But it's essentially the membrane throughout the body. So the cardiovascular system, the blood-brain barrier, the gut lining, all of those are very similar in their structures. And so we'll cover that in March when Petra comes to talk to us. So what's going on with these chemical messages, and you know, how does all of this work, and the gut-brain connection? So the GI tract is home to 500 million enteric neurons. And you know, it's often called the second brain, but I sometimes wonder if the guts maybe are our first brain. But 70% of the body's immune cells are in the gut, and of course, those trillions of microbes. And the vagus nerve is interconnected with the organs and the brainstem. So it's kind of like the central highway, if you will. I don't know if maybe I would call it the Audubon. And this is just a handful of the chemical messages, neuropeptides, hormones that are being made and transported throughout the body by the microbes in the gut. And what happens, so this is, there's something called a cell danger signal. So when you start to get something like, for example, the LPS, you know, the body starts to recognize that and it turns on a danger signal. And so you're having this balancing back and forth between your sensory nervous system and your immune system trying to address the problem. So if you're in a chronic inflammatory state, then your nervous system is constantly on high alert. So it's in this state of stress. Well, going back for a moment to the minerals, when we get in a state of stress, it burns up the energy. So it's burning up the minerals that we have. It's burning up that magnesium. It's burning up that copper. It's depleting those minerals much, much faster than it would if everything was in a nice, happy homeostasis here.
Mhm.
So those signals are getting sent throughout the system. I mean, we talked a lot tonight about our bodies and what's going on in here, but these same kind of signals are going on outside in the environment, in our soil, the danger signals that are going into our plants, in our animals, the danger signals that are going on there, because we don't have healthy ecosystems anymore because of the way we have been growing our food, treating our environment, and treating ourselves. So it's thrown all of this out of balance. And the minerals imbalance, I think, is probably the primary driver of a lot of what's going on, the damage to the membranes, the lack of microbial diversity, the shift to a more pathogenic microbiome. And so it's depleting our microbial partners across the system. And that, I think, you know, I'm going to be not, I don't want to be political because I think, well, like we live in a mad world at the moment. But what I will say is I do think that Robert Kennedy is focused on some of these key things with what's going on, you know, from the food all the way through the human body. And at least it has elevated the conversation so that more people can have a conversation about what is going on in our collective ecosystems and how it's affecting our health. Because, I mean, I can tell you, before I got into the microbiome, I was an executive in a company where we had properties in 62 cities across the United States, and I was always on an airplane. And I can tell you 20 years ago, when I used to board an airplane, there was seldom a wheelchair. And now when I board airplanes, there are anywhere from 5 to 10 wheelchairs per flight. And I look as I'm walking through the airport, and it's not the same airport that I saw 20 years ago. So there's clearly a serious problem going on in our collective health. And I think it's here. It's here in the microbes, the minerals, the membranes, and how that has disrupted all of these critical messages that are so important to a healthy life. So with that, I will stop my presentation and open it up to questions. And thank you for listening to me. Hi, Norma Jean.
Hey, everybody. I'm Martha. So when you were talking about how there's so much glyphosate, I mean, glyphosate is technically an antibiotic, right?
Yes, it is.
So so you have antibiotics in the soil, and it's everywhere. And people who have been taking multiple courses of antibiotics over the course of their lifetime, they've destroyed their microbiome. So it's, you know, I think a lot of it stems from too many antibiotics, but nothing you can do about that, you know. Can't fix everything overnight, for sure.
You can't fix everything overnight, but the first step is really awareness. Awareness for you to be mindful and to understand there are other antibiotic things. I have talked from time to time about how we often think that in the fresh foods section of the grocery store that we're doing ourselves a good service by, you know, getting that bag of already cut up carrots, or, you know, the fresh vegetables that are already prepackaged, or, you know, we're going to have hummus, and so we buy ourselves the little container of hummus. But all of those, quote, fresh foods have to have some type of preservative on them in order not to rot. Well, those preservatives are anti-enzymatic, which is, you know, another term for anti-life, antibiotic. And, there are many different types of food preservatives, but, was really interesting to me in Dr. Ninham talking about vitamin C, which goes by a lot of different names, but citric acid is used as one of the primary preservatives in the food supply. And as Dr. Ninham told me, that stops enzymes in their tracks. So, you want to be mindful of these preservatives and the issues that they can potentially cause.
That was an excellent talk, by the way.
Yes.
Thank you, Norma Jean. Well, this is a quiet bunch tonight. I guess I knocked your socks off or something, because there's not a lineup of questions.
Well,
or I answered all your questions. Okay, Chris has a question.
Yeah, I'm putting this together, so I'm speechless. But so good, Martha. When we're talking about brain issues, as in Parkinson's and other neurodegenerative problems, we're often thinking about the sympathetic system versus parasympathetic. And what's the name of the book that you recommend? Stuck on
Pause. Yeah.
Yes. And and there's also the idea stuck in sympathetic, right? I think pause is maybe freeze, the fight, flight, or freeze state when she, in that title. But there's also stuck in sympathetic as one of the problems. And what we usually are thinking about is what kinds of environmental outside their factors are creating this response, and how can we beat back the stress so that the patient can naturally move into parasympathetic more easily. But this is a very big parallel for me. You mentioned that the LPSs, they're recognized as they throw the body into sympathetic because they are and into fight or flight, and they are internal. And really, I think if you'd asked 10 people who know a decent amount about Parkinson's, they would think we're talking about mainly just talking about the external stresses, but these are the endotoxins and the internal stresses, correct? Have I got this right? I mean, it's
right. And the other thing that I think a lot of people don't think about in terms of stress is nutritional stress. So we are in a state of what I'll call high calorie malnutrition. And there's actually a book, what's his name? It's thiamine deficiency and high calorie malnutrition.
B1.
Derek Lonsdale, I think was his name. He was a doctor at the Cleveland Clinic. And it's, it starts with B1, but if you go back to that diagram I showed, all those B vitamins, I mean, that's in your microbiome. Those B vitamins are being made there. And so that deficiency, I think I have to go back and really look at that paper again, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's not a connection to glyphosate in that deficiency.
Right. Yeah. Well, Martha, that's really what I was trying to express. So that when we talk about metabolism, which you just brought up in terms of food, when we talk about metabolism and and dieting and how stress can impact metabolism, external stress, but I've read that there is really a much greater taxing of the body and into sympathetic over internal metabolic problems, the because it is such a high priority for the body to be balanced metabolically. I think it's like comes right after like the pH that's always primary for staying alive, right? And
Right.
yeah, and so I learned that was another surprising learning, and it reminds me very much of what I learned tonight, that these internal stresses, which become chemical stresses, correct? It becomes a chemical thing, and any amount of meditation is not going to take care of that. It can help, but you
It
see
can
where I'm
help,
going.
but-
What can you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can help, but it's, ultimately a larger scale problem. But I do think like calming the mind and calming the body has profound metabolic impact internally.
Right. Okay.
But I will say, like, one of the foundational things of the paper that I'm working on with Dr. Ninham is actually a metabolic swing of, so there are certain gram-negative bacteria that produce an enzyme called urease, and that enzyme attacks and kills the good bacteria and spills out all of their calcium and potassium, and you get a big rise in potassium that causes all kinds of downstream effects with the glycocalyx, this membrane collapse, and that basically translates all the way down to the axons in your neurons.
Oh, wow. So the glycocalyx, I think I was madly writing.
Yeah.
That is the membrane that is, we sometimes call it a lining, sometimes call it a membrane. Are we talking the same thing, or is it a different system?
It's basically the fuzzy layer
Okay.
that surrounds everything. So it's the glycocalyx and endothelial surface layer. So it's like these little hair-like extensions. And I mean, it's nanoscale. But it's much bigger than, some of these, like a cell membrane or thing. It has much larger impact throughout the body. Our cells have a glycocalyx. Our blood-brain barrier has a glycocalyx. Our gut lining has it's everywhere.
It's like what's we talk about the space that's in the cell, and that we're mostly space, right? We're mostly
Right.
Yes, and so it's everything that's in that space is the glycocalyx?
Jen, do you want to say something?
Well, I want to say it's the structure of the container,
Yeah.
and it's made of hyaluronic acid, actually, at least the heart vessels, right? Or is it all the same
Yeah.
substance?
Sulfated polymers of hyaluronic acid is a big component of it. Yeah.
And I'd love to learn more about not to hijack you, Chris, but
No.
then what the mineral situation is in the glycocalyx.
Well, that's what we're actually trying to kind of connect some dots with, because different minerals behave differently within the glycocalyx. Also, there are gas nanobubbles that move in and out of, and different sugars, different amino acids, and different salts make nanobubbles with different stability. And so you want stable nanobubbles that kind of keep the little hairs standing up on end, and that's what provides that protection. So
Wow.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you both.
okay, Paula, it looks like you have a question, and then I'll go back to Norma Jean again.
Yeah, hi. Well,
I have a couple of questions. Fortunately, I was late, so I was not able to hear the whole talk. So first question, where can I find your papers to read? And where can I find this call? Because it says it's recorded.
So the recorded call will be up on the YouTube channel, usually in about a week.
What is the name of the YouTube channel? Is it after your name or?
It's the BiotiQuest YouTube channel.
Oh,
But
okay.
you should get a link to it because it's usually a private channel for the
Oh.
people who have come on the call. But if you're getting the emails about the call, you will get the
Yeah.
email about the recording and it will show you the channel.
Okay.
And we also put it, are you on the Facebook page?
Not generally, only on the private Facebook pages.
So in the private Sugar Ship Challenge Facebook group, we usually post it there as well.
Oh, you have private Facebook page yourself?
Yep.
Oh,
So there's a Sugar Ship Challenge Facebook page.
okay. And okay, I'm gonna make a request for you
Okay.
to join. So where can I find your papers that you published already?
Well, let's see. Hang on, and I'll post them in the chat. Let's see.
You mentioned the Weston Price one. So that's
Yep. So that one just came out. Let's see. So here's the link to the Weston Price article. I'm putting in the chat. And I can just quickly share that so you can see it, I think.
Are those papers on your website as well?
They should be, like the Weston Price one would be linked there. Our clinical trials are not on the website because of regulatory stuff. We're not allowed to put a clinical trial that was done in a unhealthy population. So we did it in a diabetes population. So this,
Okay.
Is the Weston Price article, and it's basically covering the background of the paper that we did with Dr. Don Huber on the soggy sauerkraut and the loss of cellular structure of the plant from glyphosate from the conventional manure that was used on the organic sauerkraut. So this, you can see, this is the shikimate pathway where in plants the lignin is produced, and you can see these little dots, which is where the different minerals are. So let me see if I can zoom. It's kind of fuzzy, so you might not be able to see it. But if you see up here, cobalt, which is chelated by glyphosate, then here DHAP is a copper-dependent enzyme, and glyphosate chelates that. Chelates manganese, which is important in the EPSPS pathway. Then down here, when you're trying to make your like polyphenols and quinones and all of that, those are copper dependent. I'm getting a spam call. And then down here is your lignin and silica is the cell wall. But so it goes into some detail on that, and then it explains what happens with copper chelation, the log scale of how glyphosate chelates orders of magnitude more copper than the other minerals, and then what happens to collagen, because in the formation of collagen in the human body, you need copper, zinc, manganese, and iron. And those are all chelated by glyphosate, which I think is a large contributor to our joint problems that we're, everybody having to have their joints replaced.
Yeah.
Also, you'll often see if you get one of those anemic chickens at the grocery store and you make chicken broth, you might not get congealed. You might not get the collagenous gel-like bone broths that you used to get. And that can be due to too much glyphosate in the feed. So, and then we go into a bit of the solutions related to the work that we've done with Ancient Organics, the company that Raul founded, where we're doing the agriculture probiotics to
Yeah.
make our
So
best
basically,
effort to solve the problem all the way back at the source. But that's
gotcha.
a little bit like pushing a string up a hill against big agriculture.
Right. So basically, magnesium, copper, manganese, zinc, and iron.
Those are the critical. Those are the
Those are
critical ones for collagen synthesis. Of course, you need all of your trace minerals. And, part of this also goes back to what they've done with our salt supply. So, the vast majority of the salt we get is just sodium chloride. So what we used to get in our salt was a mineral salt, a good quality mineral salt that had all of the elements.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of the keto people talk about, the different mineral salts and taking mineral salt. I do use mineral salt in all my cooking, and I take my iodine separately. But
What kind of salt are you using?
my
Calcium.
kids laugh at me because they were like, "Oh my gosh, Mom, you got so many different salts here." But primarily, I use Redmond sea salt and Baja Gold. I also Baja Gold makes a mineral drops, and I like those to put those in my water. And I have Ancient Lakes that is, it's actually a magnesium potassium salt from a ancient lake bed in Australia. And then I like bean minerals. That's not a salt. They're like nano minerals that come from deep underground, and they're both humic and fulvic acid.
Okay. Another question is, I heard you said that you have a table or something that explains which bacteria or microbe in general is in connection of which mineral or vitamin. Is that correct?
I have a paper somewhere in my stack of papers that I used to put this presentation together, and I have to find it. And if you
Okay.
saw how many papers I have,
I haven't. Probably, I can imagine.
I have way too many, I'll say. And I have
Is this paper yours? I mean,
No,
written
no,
by you?
no,
Oh, this is
not
just
no.
okay. Gotcha. That will be very interesting to me. Another question, not related. It's about this product, Yakult.
Yes.
That I think I mentioned that this LCS Shirota bacteria is kind of what I'm concentrated on those days, because I found a paper with double-blind study that shows it's very beneficial to joints, especially knees, knee problems, arthritis, osteoarthritis. And on the research, I don't remember the amount of people, but it's not small amount of people that took this product, Yakult, for 6 months, and they measured the inflammation, CRP, and the placebo group did nothing, changed nothing, and for the Yakult group, it went down. So kind of very nice results in my opinion. But this product contains 12 milligrams of sugar. Grams, sorry. If it was milligrams, it would be nice, but it's grams. 12 grams of sugar. Well, I have a question for you. Do you believe that actually the sugar in the product is beneficial as well with the bacteria? Because this is what the people were taking, the product itself.
So the sugar is feeding the bacteria. I mean, most bacteria grow on sugars.
Mhm.
I mean, they all like sugars. Where I think sugar has become a significant problem for us is several ways. One is the sugar that we get nowadays. So let's go back 100 years. The sugar, what people were sweetening their food with was maple syrup, molasses, and maybe some beet sugar, but mostly maple sugar, maple sugar and molasses are both a sugar compound that is very mineral rich. So the sugar is paired with the mineral in this bioavailable way. Now we get these super concentrated sugars. We're getting sucrose, which is a disaccharide. So that requires enzymes, which means it requires energy to break it down. And if you go back to those old sugars, they were carrying the enzymes for energy production.
Oh.
Yeah.
So now we have a sugar that doesn't carry any enzymes for energy production. Most of it comes from sugar cane that has been dried down with glyphosate. So it's probably has some kind of residue of that. And it requires energy to break it down. And it requires microbes to break it down. Well, if you don't have the microbes to break it down, then you're in trouble. And that's what sugarship does, is it breaks it down.
Yeah.
Now,
So if the ingredient is glucose, what is it?
Glucose is a simple sugar. It's a monosaccharide that does not require an enzyme to break it down.
So
sucrose is 50% glucose and 50% fructose in a double sugar molecule that requires an enzyme to break it so that you can use.
So actually, this is not so bad. I mean, if it's glucose, it's better than sugar. Is it?
Yeah. Well, it's not sucrose. Yeah. So
it's
it
not
can
sucrose.
be immediately used as energy.
Okay.
And it's not going to require energy to break it down.
But do you believe the combination, actually, the sugar in the product helps with the microbe and the whole procedure with the osteoarthritis?
That I can't tell you, but I can tell you, it's feeding that Lactobacillus casei shirota. And one of the interesting things about casei shirota is it breaks down phenylalanine, and I would have to look it up, but I'll bet you that phenylalanine is somehow involved in
with osteoarthritis, actually.
Osteoarthritis. So,
mm-hmm.
The Yakult is something I had also recommended to a number of people with Parkinson's, because I think they have trouble, not all of them, but certainly John had like some mutations related to phenylalanine metabolism. So from our age category, nobody was testing us when we were born for PKU, but PKU is that it's a inborn error of metabolism where you can't break down phenylalanine. And so you have to either go on a low or no phenylalanine special diet or blah, blah. But if you take casei shirota, it will break down the phenylalanine for you. So I actually I met the scientists, a couple of the scientists from Yakult at a conference at Harvard, probably, gosh, it's probably been 6 years ago. And I told them, I was like, this helps break down the phenylalanine that I think is connected with Parkinson's in some cases, and asked them to go study it. And I think they actually may have done some studies. I have to go look, but
Probably because there are a few studies, but
they have a
this
lot
one
of
is-
money and they do a lot of research.
yeah. So do you suggest for me to drink it as it is or make an yogurt? But I'm gonna lose the sugar, and I
Well-
don't know if the sugar will be helpful or actually it's damaging. And I'm eating your sugar shift, so I don't know what's going on with my microbes, honestly.
Jan, did you want to say something?
Well, I do want to point out that unless you're fermenting it or keeping it out of the fridge, it's usually sold in refrigerators as well as frozen. So it's not fermenting. It's doing nothing with the sugar and the glucose as a finished product. And I know that like kombuchas have to label the starting amount of sugar. I don't know if that, like, where in the fermentation process are these grams of sugar?
Well,
you
if
know,
it's a live
located?
bacteria and it's got sugar in there, there's going to be interaction. You
Even
can't-
if refrigerated or frozen?
I mean, it'll be slower. It'll be a
Yeah.
slower activity, but
Okay.
there will be activity.
Okay.
It's just it's a much slower metabolism, but
I don't understand what is the point. What point are you trying to make?
Just that you're getting a static product if it is frozen. That's
No,
all.
it's not
That there's
frozen. This
no-
is in the refrigerator area.
or refrigerated. So it might not be fermenting the way that we think about it when we make yogurt from things. So,
So
No, you can
I
make a
think
yogurt.
the point is you're maybe not getting all the short chain fatty acids and the other byproducts that would make. But if you make a yogurt with it, you might get a number of other molecules out of it. But
Well, I
it's-
actually want to do whatever they did on the study, and they were
Don't
drinking
overthink
this as a milk.
yeah,
So this is the study says you drink one of those every day. So
Yep.
this is what I'm doing basically.
don't overthink it. Just do it that way. You're
Thank
you're overthinking it that way.
Always. Thank you.
You're welcome. Norma Jean, you had another question, and then we have Mary Ramos.
Yeah, when you were talking about all the B vitamins that are made by your gut bacteria, I know that's not so much now, but I've always had issues with low B vitamins. I also have MTHFR issue. So one of the things that came up recently is one of my functional medicine doctors said, well, you should really make sure you supplement with folate, because if you're not supplementing with folate, you're getting an inflammatory situation from lack of folate. But I just kind of thought that was interesting, and I'm going to have to definitely go back and listen to the recording of this, because the whole B vitamin thing, like I knew that's where B vitamins were made, but I just wondered, since probably at least 40% of the population probably has MTHFR, I just wonder how many people are really affected by that.
Well, I suspect too that part of their problem is they don't have the minerals, because to make those B vitamins, many of them are copper dependent. So if you don't have those minerals and you don't have the microbes, you can't make them. There's a neurologist. Her name is Dr. Gominak, I think, or Gomniak. Her website, I think, is Sleep Right. And she has a lot of YouTube educational videos and stuff. And she has talked about the people that she works with. she does typically have to have them on some type of a B vitamin supplement until she can get their gut restored. Once she gets their gut restored, then they can make the B vitamins themselves. So it's,
I mean, and I've been doing the copper. I don't know how long now, since the first meeting that we had with Morley, but I was only doing 1 a day. So now I've upped it to 2 a day. I know he said you could do more than that.
well, it's interesting because I mean, if you can believe this, not that I really have time for this, but I'm always trying to connect new dots between the minerals and the microbes. And I'm also now trying to translate Morley over to the glycocalyx with berry. And so I'm actually taking the RCP class again for the 4th time. And I just start that this week. So I'm hoping to be able to bring some new insights as I go back through the material and meet new people in the group. And but there's always some miraculous stories that come out of people who have followed the root cause protocol. And again, it goes back to those very important minerals. So you could actually have the microbes in your GI tract, but they're not getting the food they need to do what they need to do. So, you're revitalizing them when you start to, bring the mineral content back.
Is there anybody who has done how do you know what the exact ratio of magnesium to manganese to copper? I mean, is there an ideal, optimal?
There are some older papers that I think Morley has shared that shows the mineral makeup of the human body. But I suspect some of that has to do with where your ancestors are from, because the mineral content of the soils in different parts of the globe is different, and the salts are different, and so I think that's something also that's really underappreciated. I talk sometimes about food as information and eating your food locally, because it's giving you information. It's giving you information about the soil, the sunlight, everything around you. And so the mineral content too is probably, and I have thought about that some with respect to John, because his ancestry is from Western Ireland. And I have gone back multiple times to look at, what is the soil content of the of Western Ireland? Is that something we should have looked at? What was the diet of Western Ireland? What did they eat? And of course, where his family's from, it's a lot of bog. And
So that'd be similar to
bog is a very interesting microbiome. And
isn't that kind of like fulvic material?
Yeah. And if you fall into the bog, I don't think you rot.
Good to know.
So anyway, and I have, John's family, he and his sisters still have land over there. And I have thought, well, maybe we should just go over there and do some microbiome samples and see, get the microbes out of the bog and see if there's something that could save the world. I don't know.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Okay. Mary?
Well, I was going to ask you about the B vitamins also because of neuropathy that I have. I've been watching this guy named Elliot Overton from England, and he's talking about taking mega doses of B vitamin 1.
B1.
Yeah, the B1, and he recommends, well, it's got the 3 different supplements. I just bought the one, but
Hey, Mary,
I'd rather have somebody I'd rather have the microbes be making this, but
Mary,
yes.
my husband has some neuropathy issues. So he started taking he'd been taking alpha lipoic acid for a while, and he
Yeah.
noticed a little bit of a difference. And then he started with a B1 supplement on top of that, and he's noticed a huge difference.
Yeah, I've been taking the alpha-lipoic acid for about
Try the B1.
4 or 5,
It's like
and then I started,
bentofamidine or
yeah, I've been
something,
taking that for a year.
and you
And
didn't
then I
see a
added
difference.
this other one that he recommended. I can't remember the name of it, but it's also
Isn't it B3 the one that is connected to the nervous system?
no, it's the thiamine
B1, I think.
B1.
So here's a paper from Dr. Lonsdale. It's from a while ago. It's called Hiding in Plain Sight, Modern Thiamine Deficiency. It's interesting because it looks like it was published in 2021, but Derek Lonsdale he passed away a long time ago. So,
But probably somebody's digging it up. Yeah.
well, Chandler Mars is the who worked with him.
Uh-huh.
So maybe she's publishing it, but
I'm gonna go around the corner to pick up that medicine. I want to give you the name of it.
but what was also interesting when I found Dr. Lonsdale's work about the B1, there was also article. I can't remember whether it was Smithsonian or National Geographic or something that was talking about the loss of bird species and connecting it to thiamine deficiency. And I was like, okay, something is being bound up in the environment that is essential for making, or killed in the environment that is essential for making B vitamins and the birds are the same things happening to the birds. And I really need to go back and look at the connection to glyphosate, because I feel like every time I go look for a connection to glyphosate, there is one. But, it's interesting today. So I follow investigative journalist named Carrie Gilliam, who has written a book about glyphosate and has followed all of the glyphosate stuff for probably 20 years. And she had an article today, and I don't want to be political, but all of this stuff over this last week, in the pulling of the funding of USAID and looking at where that fund. So there was a public relations firm that was hired to build a database of all the activists and anyone who was speaking out against glyphosate and these chemicals, and had like deeply personal information about their families and all kinds of stuff that was accessible to all these chemical companies in private. And our taxpayer dollars were going to fund some of that. So anyway, doesn't matter how you feel about the whole hoo-ha. It's kind of crazy at the moment, but I'll say, hats off to pulling the funding for somebody who is, going after citizens who are trying to educate people and show people what kind of problems are going on. So,
Okay, so I found my medicine. I can't read it. It's called Thiamax, and it's put out by Elliot. But I want to know what microbes make this stuff, because he wants you to take. You have to titrate it up to like 1,200 or 1,500 milligrams a day.
yeah.
My neuropathy is getting better, but only because I started the carnivore diet. All those other things did nothing for my neuropathy. I was having so much pain last year that's why I decided to go on the carnivore diet. And
Interesting. So I just was looking for, if you ever want to know like what microbe produces what, you can
Uh-huh.
just go Google and you type microbial production of blank.
Okay.
And then you get a paper like this is actually a book by Springer Nature, Thymin producing lactic acid bacteria and their potential use in the prevention of neurodegenerative diseases.
Oh.
There's actually I forget exactly what his background.
Plantarum. So plantarum. So,
Plantarum.
you know,
But there's
and
how
we
many
have the best
plantarum?
plantarum on the planet because it also breaks down glyphosate.
Well, I take your sugar shift almost every day, so yeah. And then
But this-
doesn't your ideal immunity also have the plantarum?
It does. Every one of our formulas has our plantarum in it.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. I went to the doctor today. I had a small sebaceous cancer removed from my wrist. And they came in to do my prep and they said, and we're going to order you an antibiotic. And I said, why? It's not infected. Oh, well, we want to prevent an infection. And I looked at her and I said, I don't think so. I'm not taking it.
Yeah. I mean, you know, they're valuable tools in the case of a, you know, a life-threatening infection and stuff, but they're handed out like candy these days. And they're just so detrimental to our overall health. It's,
Yeah. When you do the root protocol, I love Morley. I think he's got so much knowledge. But when you do that, doesn't he want you to follow a specific kind of diet? And I know he uses fruit juices and stuff like that.
no, they're not. So when you say fruit juice, they do an adrenal cocktail, which is
Right.
vitamin C, basically a salt, a mineral salt, potassium kind of for adrenal support. It's whole food vitamin C. So some people make that with orange juice, but you know, for the most part, that's, I mean, they're not recommending a high carb diet.
Okay.
And he recommends a lot of like organ meats, and one of the many times the people that he's helped the most are people who have been vegans for a very long time and are just incredibly unhealthy. And, you know, he might just get them to take liver capsules and they see what a huge difference it makes. And then, you know, they kind of start rethinking. In fact, there's a young woman in my RCP tutorial group who was a vegan for many years and was having so many health problems in her early 30s, started, you know, trying to figure out, like, why am I so sick? And, you know, figured out she was malnourished, basically.
Malnourished, yeah.
So, yeah, the RCP does not require a lot of strange, and is certainly not, you know, certainly not high carb at all. You know, I would say it's more like a Nourishing Traditions, Sally Fallon type.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Let's see. I think I have Mary Price.
Hello. Hi, everybody. I'm here. Talking about the B vitamins as well. Wondering about bioavailability. And you're kind of putting the spotlight on the elements that could be off. What about, and I'm testing under a lot of oxidative stress, and glutathione is supposed to be the big antioxidant. And so I'm wondering about your thoughts on that. I also, Consumer Labs, Jen, just came out with their recommendations for glutathione supplements. And that we need like 500 milligrams a day for 6 months before you start to see it being a help. But anyway, glutathione and bioavailability, does that tie in together or not?
Well, so Jen might want to pop in here in a second, but you can overdo antioxidants, I'm going to say.
Okay.
And I actually learned this when I went to the biological dentist who had a machine that measures redox and oxidative stress. And because I thought I was going to be getting a tooth pulled that day, I took 1,000 milligrams of liposomal vitamin C and glutathione that morning. And when I got to the dentist's office and, we were doing all this screening and stuff, and he did that test, and I had redox stress, too many antioxidants. And so glutathione, you have to, it gets converted to reduced glutathione, and microbes do that. So reduced glutathione is actually produced by the microbes in sugar shift. So I'm just going to say I'm just not a huge fan of overloading with antioxidants without really having any kind of measurement of knowing if you're because again, back to that membrane, like it's measuring, you want to be like in homeostasis. When you take these large doses, you're swinging yourself and I can tell you, the more you swing yourself, the more it gets difficult for you to hold the center.
Oh, okay.
So, I would really like to see, and in fact, Dr. Nieto, who makes that machine, has been talking to some people about trying to get it miniaturized so that people could actually have a way to measure at home to tell if their supplements are causing oxidative or redox stress at all.
So you're not big on a lot of vitamin C? I mean, like I'm not absorbing it and they go, oh, take some more vitamin C. Well,
so vitamin C,
mhm.
I will say, do not take ascorbic acid. Because if you go back to what I said during the talk about, Dr. Ninham, ascorbic acid stops enzymes in their tracks.
I'm doing the bioavailable.
Yeah, you need whole food vitamin C.
That's it.
Whole food vitamin C. So that would be like camu camu or acerola or there's a
Synergy is the company that I get.
I don't know Synergy, but there are some, and I have actually just taken myself to buying an orange and cutting a few slices of orange when I'm taking whatever, and it's like, okay, I need vitamin C with my minerals or whatever, and I just eat a few slices of my orange, and I like, is that enough? Maybe not, but
I've been using the vitamin C, a liposomal vitamin C, but only 250 milligrams about every other day for the oxalates. It's no, I'm not for the oxalates, for the histamine. Apparently, vitamin C will knock down the histamine in your blood. So, I don't know, liposomal vitamin C. That sounds reasonable.
I mean, I'm not an expert on that by any stretch. I just know that you don't want to take ascorbic acid.
Yeah, I know. And I don't take anything with citric acid either.
Jen, do you like about glutathione or vitamin C?
Well, Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you. I think, it's easy to take that out of context and then create, huge variability that we wouldn't necessarily want to do. NAD claim, makers of NAD claim to be a precursor to glutathione. And so increasing NAD can increase glutathione naturally. But again, what do it's really expensive, and you get into, digestively, is it actually doing what you think it is? Vitamin C, liposomal vitamin C, I was looking at the Quicksilver, and it is a sodium ascorbate. What do we think of that?
Well, ascorbate is typically more whole, but I like when it's paired with something like sodium ascorbate or ascorbate, whatever,
Mhm.
it's, I mean, I'd have to go actually look it up and
I don't know other brands. That's the brand I have in my fridge, Mary. But I stopped taking it as, I've been listening to Morley too, and I don't know that vitamin C is the thing. If, you have a cold, or if, we need to.
So what I will tell you back to the presentation, I talked about that very important enzyme, the PAM enzyme, peptidoglycine alpha amidating monooxygenase. It requires two things to work properly. It requires ascorbate. Oh, look, I'm making balloons. So ascorbate, whole food vitamin C, ascorbate, and copper. 2 copper atoms and ascorbate in order for that enzyme to be active. So it is important, but back to ascorbic acid, unfortunately, in many publications and in online, or you look at a supplement, they just say vitamin C, and people are like, oh, take more vitamin C. And I'm like, it stops the enzymes. Now, maybe sometime you want to stop an enzyme, but most of the time you don't want to stop the enzymes. And the reason why they use, these derivatives of it as a food preservative is because it's stopping the enzymes. And so if you go back to me talking about the fresh food section and all the anti-enzymatic things, it's, they're using these things that stop the enzymes.
Okay.
I don't
So-
like, I see Petra's on here. She probably knows more about vitamin C than
Well,
I.
I wanted to say something about that because this whole liposomal business, yes, it has shown that you have higher levels in the blood when you take it, but it is all still ascorbic acid from GMO corn, all coming from China. That's my big issue with it. So, they just charge you a lot more for it. I don't advocate any of that stuff. Honestly, I don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of vitamin C? You mentioned, Martha, you mentioned Camu. I actually had some powder of that stuff in my cart, but on Amazon, but then it's like, how much of it do you take?
So, even normal good foods contain vitamin C. Liver contains vitamin C.
Right.
So it is a nutrient. So I don't know how important it is for us to get synthetic versions. I really don't.
Sauerkraut produces a huge amount of vitamin C.
I know you guys don't understand. I can't eat those things right now. I mean, I love sauerkraut. I used
Can
to
you
have
eat an orange?
what?
Can you
I
eat
don't
an
know about
orange?
an orange. I haven't tried. Well, probably no. I can't have citrus because of the histamines.
How about cherries?
Yeah, almost all of those things cause histamines. It's very unpleasant. It's like, remember when, I don't know if you guys had hot flashes when you went through menopause, but my whole body gets hot and I get itchy, real itchy. It's awful. So yeah. Alexa, stop. I have to have reminders to put my glasses on.
No.
And also I was using the ascorbic acid because of the oxalates.
I would be like very cautious about doing that. And sort of back again to this, the wide swinging of all these supplements at very high doses, which again are not well absorbed.
Yeah.
What that does in terms of affecting the membranes, the glycocalyx, and the microbes, frankly. So
Well, I've got
yeah.
liver in my refrigerator right now, so I'll be having some liver probably this week.
that's better for you. Okay, Mahaleen has been patiently waiting over here, so I'm gonna oh, you're on mute, honey. Or well, I don't know if you're on mute, but I can't hear you.
Can't hear.
Yeah. Do you want to type your question? I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't show that you're on mute here either. Well, while you're trying to figure that out, Chris, you had another question?
Yeah, just to go back for quickly to the phenylalanine, and its relationship to PD possibly being from a gene variant that cannot break it down. Have I got that part right?
Yes. I mean, there's often problems with protein metabolism in Parkinson's. So that's what led me to looking at that. And I have Avery's diseases of the newborn, which it's like, a tome for pediatricians or, medical students or whatever, but it has all these metabolic things that, in a new infant you're looking for. And when you look in that Avery's diseases of newborn under PKU, basically, when I read that, it was almost an exact description of John's first 4 years of life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was like, this kid had a PKU deficiency, and
Yeah.
his 23andMe, he has like some, you can have one SNP or, however, and he had some deficiency, I'll say. So
do you happen to know what the main SNPs would be on that for that one?
I don't, but I mean, you could look up.
Yeah, I'll look that up.
PKU.
So your idea is that so there probably, you say there's several variants that could contribute to that. And John might have had one, and there could someone else where it's life threatening could have 5 or something. Okay.
Right.
So yeah, I just want to, because, Lad has been recommended to be on, it's called L-phenol Relief. It's a product that has been recommended for his Parkinson's. And I guess I didn't really know why, but if you're not, it's an essential amino acid. And if he wasn't able to break that down, so I guess they're just supplying it. I'll have to look at it, and I'm wondering why they're calling it relief. Relief is sort of like relief from phenol. And we're looking at, we want the opposite of that, right? We want,
well, so what's the name of it again, or how do you spell it?
It's called D-phenol relief. I was going to go grab it, but I don't want to miss anything.
Yeah, well, that sounds like, so D-phenol would be D-phenylalanine. So
Right.
most of your
There's L and D, right? L and D.
Yeah, there's L and D, and I think most of your amino acids are L form. I'd have to look. So
Okay, all right, I'll look,
kinda
I'll
interesting.
figure that out. Okay, thank you. Because,
you might try the Yakult.
yeah, yeah, but lad's from, has Scotch and Irish blood too. He's that northern,
Yeah.
British Isles. So, okay, thank you.
Yep. Jen?
Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. The thought is long gone. I'm sorry. I
Okay.
got
Right.
raised.
Well, we're bumping up on the end of our
oh.
call anyway. So
Okay.
I just thought of it regarding Mary, back to Mary. Would IV vitamin C be a good option?
No.
Okay.
That
All
is
right.
ascorbic acid. That is like,
Well, I know you can get sodium ascorbate. You have to ask for it. And then you can take it further and find clinics that don't have corn based vitamin C as well. But are you saying it would just be too much? I'm just thinking bypassing digestion because so many foods are off limits.
I just like from Leonard, so Leonard makes the redox diagnostics machine that measures oxidative and redox stress.
Yeah.
And his machine is used a lot in Europe. He has had trouble getting the doctors that do the IV therapies in the US to adopt the machine because they actually don't want to know that their very lucrative IB practice is causing people damage.
Oh my God.
So, like, I would say just be very thoughtful and careful about the mega doses you're if you're doing. I know that some people get benefits from the IV therapies, but again, it's a large swing within the system, and when you start to understand the sensitivity of this glycocalyx, I think your mind will be blown. So Petra is going to actually join us on March 11th, and we'll be talking about that. And
Cool. Great.
Yeah, I actually did some IV therapy last year, Jen, but I always refused the ascorbic acid vitamin C. I think it was here on Martha's program that somebody talked about the ascorbic acid previously. Maybe it was Morley.
might have been Morley. It's, most of the ascorbic acid, Petra is right, most of it comes from China.
Okay.
Get
Well,
your, so what I would say, if you're sensitive to like foods that have been fermented for a long time, Mary, what you could do is get a cabbage, cut it. No, I'm not telling you to eat it.
Oh, okay.
I'm not telling you to eat it.
Okay.
Get a cabbage, cut it up, put a little salt on it, put some distilled water,
Okay.
and let it sit on your counter for 2 days. And then drain all the cabbage out, like take the liquid and put it in your thing and take a little shot of that cabbage water every day. And it's not going to have been
The best.
It won't have fermented so long that it's going to have a lot of your inflammatory stuff in it, but I bet you it'll have your vitamin C that you need.
Okay. And probably has some plantarum in it.
And it'll have some plantarum in it.
Okay.
Okay.
I could try that.
Oh,
The last time I bought organic cabbage, it disintegrated.
Well, then you need to go read my Weston Price article and you'll know why.
Well, I already know why, because you had already given that talk, and then I bought organic cabbage about a month later, making a batch of sauerkraut, and it was like 3 weeks fermented, and I said, well, I don't know, I better check it. And it was like mush. It was like
Mush.
applesauce. Yeah.
Yep.
It was terrible. I had to throw it all away. tasted terrible.
Okay, it looks like Mary's got a question. That's going to be our last question, and I'm going to head
Okay.
off ahead.
Just that this source of vitamin C, it's from Pure Synergy, vitamin C from organic fruits and berries only. So if you want to check it out, first ingredient, camu berry extract. So
What was the company?
Pure Synergy.
Pure Synergy. Okay.
Yep.
Let's see.
Well, Martha, that was just a fabulous presentation and discussion, everybody. We really learned a lot tonight.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us, and hope to see you again in the future. Mark your calendar for Petra, because she is just an incredible wealth of knowledge, and I have learned so much from her. And you can actually look her up. She has quite a few YouTube discussions. She's, I would say, one of the experts on deuterium depleted water in treating cancer.
Oh,
Petra
She,
who?
she has worked with a lot of people with cancer.
What is
and
her name? Petra?
Petra Dorfman. Petra
Dorson.
Davalier Dorsman.
Okay.
I'll put it in the chat too.
Yeah, she's a naturopath out in Los Angeles.
Great.
Okay.
okay.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
much.
Thank you.
Always
you.
look forward to these discussions.
Yeah. Good night, everybody. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Time.